pin their frame on this one, if
Yeah,
that's okay.
good idea.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
Microphone. Propped up a bit.
She might want to see us.
It needs to be like this.
Actually, I'll just delete that folder. Just I may not be doing everything, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah.
My hip's been a little sensitive lately.
Okay, so I'll start. So, welcome to our Vinyasa class. My name's Sam, and I'm going to be taking the first 15 minutes of this class. And I just would like everyone to begin with their bolster. So taking the bolster to pop it horizontally on the mat, and then sitting in front of the bolster and lying back over it like this, with your legs in butterfly pose or out long, depending on what feels comfortable. Now, opening the chest and the head here, like the throat, if that's too intense, take your block and place it underneath your head, or clasp, like place your hands behind your head is another option. Starting to take some breaths here into the heart to expand the heart on the inhale. And as you exhale, release the air from the mouth. So we're going to inhale through the nose and then exhale through the mouth a few times. Settle the body down onto the earth and start to open through the heart and the throat. So today's class is centered around the throat chakra. And to me, the throat chakra has been a big part of my journey with singing and sounding, like feeling confident with my voice. But yeah, recently I had a sore throat, and I had a session with my acupuncturist, and she said that when the throat is sore, that it means that you're not speaking your truth, like that there's a blockage there from the heart with the voice. So today we're just going to focus on the heart, so opening through the heart as you inhale, but then as you exhale, feel the air rising up from the heart and then back out the mouth. So it's going to begin this up and down feeling with your breath. On the inhale, you expand the breath into the heart. And on the exhale, you feel the energy in the prana, the air falling out of the mouth. Taking a few breaths like this, where you're starting to track the breath into the heart on the inhale. On the exhale, the air is rising up, back out the mouth. So I want to also bring your attention now to the link between the throat and the pelvic floor. So there's actually anatomically, they can look quite similar from the female anatomy, the throat and the pelvic floor. But yeah, you've also got these bandhas. So we've got the throat bandha and the mula bandha. So pelvic floor. So now take a breath in to inhale and expand the heart. But on the exhale, as the air falls out of the mouth, pull in through your mula bandha. So inhale to expand the body, and then exhale, pull in and up through the mula bandha to actually pull the energy all the way up and out of the mouth. So a couple of breaths like this, feeling into the link between the breath and the mula bandha. Okay, and then from there, we're going to bring our hands behind the head to support the head as you slowly come up from that position into sitting, and then come into a seated position. So half Padmasana, which is half lotus, or just the easy pose, just sitting cross-legged, whatever feels comfortable. You may want to sit on a bolster if that feels more comfortable, or if you're comfortable like that, then stay there. And just wriggle out the bottom so that you're on your sitting bones. And we're going to go through some yogic breath, full yogic breath to begin. Then we're going to do a few rounds of Nadi Shodhana, and then we're going to see the yogic breath change or not change depending on the how the Nadi Shodhana has gone. So let's place the right hand on the belly and then the left hand on the chest, closing down the eyes. Exhale any breath in the lungs, and then we're going to inhale into the belly. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 into the chest and 1 into the collarbones, and then exhale through the belly. 2, 3, 4. 2 into the chest and 1 into the collarbones. So inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the collarbones. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just start to count for yourself. Inhaling for 4 into the belly, 2 into the ribs, and 1 into the collarbones, and then exhaling out. And just checking in that I want you to now be breathing in and out through the nose. So we're just changing it from the mouth to the nose. So a couple more breaths of this yogic breathing here to expand the lungs fully. Bringing your attention into the body, so softening through the shoulders and the jaw muscles, coming into stillness through the body if you're not already there. And finishing off the cycle that you're in now, we're going to just come back to normal belly breathing. So where your right hand is, you're just now breathing into the belly, just softly in and out through the nose. And then slowly twinkle the eyes open. Coming into Nadi Shodhana, bring your right thumb to your right nostril, your two next fingers onto your third eye, and then your your right ring finger onto your left nostril. The Nadi Shodhana is now going to balance the nadis. So we're just going to block our right nostril and inhale through the left. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Close the left. Exhale through the right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale through the right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale left. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale left. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale left. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Keep going in your own time now. Clearing the nadi channels from our left to our right to create more balance for the flow of the energy, for the flow of the energy from right to left. Feeling the strength from the sitting bones helping you sit tall. And then last round, you want to finish with exhaling through the left nostril. So once you're finished doing that, bring the hands back into this position with your left hand on your chest and your right hand on your stomach. There's no rush to finish, so just take your time. Coming into belly breathing for those that are in that heart to belly position for a couple of breaths. Inhaling into inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the nose. And then we finish here with a couple of rounds of the yogic breath again. So exhaling any air out of the lungs. And then inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into the collarbones. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just a couple more breaths like that. Really expanding the lower lungs and the sides of the lungs as you breathe into the belly and the ribs. And then exhaling and feeling that flow of air coming back up and out with the nose. One more breath like this here. And then once you're finished, come back into the belly, breathing now with both hands on your stomach. Noticing any subtle differences in the depth of the breath. So the goal is to be breathing into that deepest part of our womb space, the pelvic area. So from here, just gently, if your eyes are closed, flatter them open. And we are going to now use the balls that we have to release the muscles between the shoulder blades. So you want to have 2 balls and you want to place them behind your shoulder blades, like in between the shoulder blades. And with your knees bent, you're going to lie down onto the ball. Now, if this is too intense, you can put a block underneath your head because it can be, because those balls there are quite spiky and hard. Now, from there, bring your hands across your shoulders like you're hugging yourself gently, and then move your upper body a little bit side to side like you're rocking side to side. So the balls are quite high between the shoulder blades, and you're just gently massaging between those shoulder blades so you can release those muscles. Yeah, it can be quite painful, but it depends how tight those muscles are. Now remember, once there's a bit of tension in the body, the breath can go. So this is where you want to keep that gentle belly breathing into your abdomen. So just side to side here. And you're welcome to just gently slide up on the mat to bring the balls lower down on the spine, just to like an inch lower than where you are, to just explore the tension a bit further down. Breathing and releasing through those muscles. So often the front of the heart is explored a lot within the yogic practice, but sometimes the back of the heart is a little bit forgotten about. So this is about releasing through the back of the heart space and through the back of the lungs, so that the lungs can expand. But from there, just allow the balls to roll off to one side, and then you're going to grab your strap. Oh, do we all have a strap? Oh, great, yeah. So now just let the balls go to one side, and you're going to place the strap underneath the skull. So not right at the skull bone. And then, so that's where it's going to be, and you're going to hold quite close to the head with your hands, but then we're going to lie onto our backs. So slowly, with our knees bent, so just on a flat back. And then take a breath in, and as you exhale, you're going to pull against the straps and do a small sit-up, like a curl through the upper body. We're awakening the abdominals. So inhale. As you exhale, curl up, deepen your abdominals. Keep your elbows narrow. Yes. So you want to feel a lengthening through the back of your head, like the back of the neck. Elbows narrow, but stop. Yeah. And as you do this, keep the sacrum heavy so your lower back will want to flatten. Don't let it flatten. Keep the arch and see how high you can curl out from the rib cage. So the sternum bone drops down into the ribs as you exhale and curl up. Just 2 more here, just to awaken the abdominals. Start pulling in and up through your mula bandha, your pelvic floor. Good. Now from here, straighten your arms above your head, but keep hold of the strap and straighten your legs. So we're going to go the arms all the way onto the ground, like back behind you, with your legs down. Yeah, on the ground, like overhead with the arms, and hold the strap about shoulder width apart. So walk your hands onto the strap a bit closer. And then pull apart on the strap and drop your shoulders down. Inhale, exhale, roll all the way up to sitting. Deepening your abdominals, rolling up. Yeah, good. And then lift the strap all the way around your feet into Paschimottanasana. Inhale, and then exhale, pull yourself down, nose to knees, softening your shoulders, taking a couple of breaths here to stretch out through the hamstrings. Now, bring the strap onto your right foot. Keep your left leg long. Inhale, raise your right leg up, and then exhale, roll all the way back down. Stretching your hamstring, straightening that knee. Inhale, prepare, and then exhale, bring the leg across your body. Across the body, yes, perfect. Yeah, keeping those shoulder blades down, but stretching through the hamstring. Taking a couple of breaths here. And then slowly bring the leg back to center. Hold the strap through your right hand and bring the leg out to the side, stretching your adductor muscles, opening the hips, keeping that left leg grounded, but opening through your adductor muscle, reaching those legs away from one another. Good, and then come back into center with that right leg. Take a breath in, pull the leg towards you to deepen the stretch, and then exhale, push into the strap and roll back up into sitting. Link the strap around both feet, come into Paschimottanasana as you exhale and fold forwards, deepening your abdominals. Then place the strap around your left foot. Take a breath in as you lift that leg up, and then exhale, roll down. Stretching that left hamstring. Breathing here, straightening both legs, grounding your right leg into the floor. That hamstring, you want that to touch the floor. That's good. And then exhale and bring that left leg across your body, stretching through your ITB. Straighten the leg as much as you can. And then bring the leg across, hold the strap with your left hand, and then bring the strap out to the side. Get the leg out to the side, sorry, to stretch your adductor muscle. Opening those hips. And then bring that leg back into center. Place both feet into the strap. This is the harder one. And then push into the strap and roll up to sitting. Drop the strap to one side. Come into half lotus in sitting. You can sit on your bolster if you need to for support. And then we're just going to now stretch a little through the neck. So bring the right hand onto the head and just gently bring the ear to the shoulder. Good. Now release the right hand back down, but keep your head where it is. And really feel the stretch through the left side. And then start to look down to the armpit. And then from there, you can just gently move the neck a little bit in a slight rotation position. You can also look up to stretch the front of the neck muscles. And then come back to center and stretching the other side. So left hand to the head to gently pull it down. Breathing into the stretch and then looking down to the armpit, stretching through your levator scapular muscle. Lifting up a bit to your front of your neck. And then going into some neck rolls, either half, like a semicircle, or a full roll if that feels okay for your neck, just to release a little bit more. And then coming back into stillness, move to bolsters, come onto your hands and knees. So 4-point kneel. And feel a press of your hands into the mat and lengthen the back of the neck, looking between the hands. And then going into a couple of cat-cows. Really focus on the back of the neck staying long rather than arching. And exhale to round, and then inhale to arch the spine. Okay, and then coming into stillness, ready for the next person.
Thank you, Samantha. So we'll stay in our tabletop for now. And perhaps continue with our cat-cow. So arching from the lower back while looking up very slightly, opening up from our throat chakra ever so slightly for cow, moving into cat, arching from the upper back, feeling the stretch through the upper back, pressing down from the tops of your feet, having firm pressure on the ground with your hasta bandha. And then slowly finding a little bit more playfulness in your own time with your cat-cow, where that means swaying your hips from the left to the right, finding a little bit more fluidity in your upper body. Feeling the invigorating effects of the spiky balls on the back of our spine. And then eventually coming to stillness and in your own way, making our way to the top of the mat into a Tadasana in your own time. Let's just take a second here before we get into our sun salutations to find the ground through our feet, making sure that we have firm pressure from the three corners of our feet while still noticing the arch, almost like a tent, between the corners, lifting up from the middle. And we want to keep our head above our heart and our heart above our pelvis, so as to not have too much of a bend in our lower back or our chest. And then we'll start with our sun salutations that we practice. So bringing our hands to our heart. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasana, hands to the sky. Exhale, Uttanasana, forward fold. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, plank, step or walk. Chaturanga Dandasana and upward facing dog. Inhale, or if you're not ready for that, keep your knees on the ground, hips on the ground, and come to a cobra. Let's just stay in our upward facing dog or cobra just for a couple of breaths. Feeling the bend through the lower back. Maybe ever so slightly pointing our chin to the ceiling. And then inhale and exhale into downward facing dog. Our first down dog of the practice, so let's take a second to walk this one out. Feel stretch from the right leg as you bend into your left knee. And then feeling the stretch through the left leg as you bend into the right knee. And then coming to the top of the mat, either step, walk, or jump if you're ready. Exhale, Uttanasana. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasana, bring your hands to the sky. And exhale, Tadasana. Alright, let's do that one again. So inhale, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, Uttanasana. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, plank, Kumbhasana. Exhale, Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale, upward facing dog. Down dog, exhale. Uttanasana, forward fold. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasana. Hands to the sky. Exhale, Tadasana. Alright. Inhale, hands up to the sky. Exhale, Uttanasana. Ardha Uttanasana. Kumbhasana, plank. Chaturanga Dandasana. Upward facing dog. Downward facing dog. Step, walk, or jump to the front. Inhale, hands up to the sky. And exhale, Tadasana. Now we're going to do that again, but with a slight variation. So follow me as I go. Urdhva Hastasana. Inhale. Exhale, Uttanasana. Now coming into plank, but then lowering your knee. So we're all coming through a cobra. So lowering your hips, or if you're not ready for the bend for cobra. You can also bring your elbows to where your hands are for a sphinx to feel a little bit of a lower impact bend through the lower back. Or if you want, you can come into cobra, making sure your elbows are tucked in and your shoulders are down away from your ears. Just feel into this little bit of a stretch. Chest is shining forward. And then let's all bring our forehead to the ground, keeping our hands where they are. And then rock a little bit from side to side to feel a little bit of a massage through the forehead. And now we're preparing for bow. So in order to get our lower back ready for that, let's just have a little bit of a play with having a bend through our lower back, but not relying on pressing through our hasthabandha in order to get that as much as we might normally. So bringing our foreheads off the ground, feeling that lower back pressure, and keeping our feet, the tops of our feet, planted on the ground. We'll feel the lower back bend, and then we'll try hovering our hands off the ground just for a little bit to feel what that feels like. So let's try that a few times. So hover for a breath, and then bringing our foreheads back to the ground. And then hover and forehead to the ground. Let's try next, as a preparation into our bow, to go into our locust. So slowly sweeping our hands back and then raising the forehead of the ground if it isn't already, to feel a little bit of a bend through the lower back. And once we're pointing the fingertips to the back of the room, engaging through our triceps, and then slowly hovering our feet off the ground, engaging through the knees, engaging through our quads, making sure not to clench too much through our glutes. Stay here for one more breath. And then bringing our head to the ground, maybe facing your favorite side. Maybe have a little bit of a shake through the lower body if you need that. And in the next round, you can either continue with locust, or we can try and come into bow if your body feels ready for that. So that would involve slowly lifting from your chest again and bending from the knees, bringing your feet close to your glutes before you sweep your hands back and grab onto the outside edges of the feet before you start lifting your knees. And try and point your chin a little bit more up to the sky if you can, if that feels comfortable to open up through the throat chakra that little bit more. One more breath. And forehead to the ground. Let's all make our way to a tabletop again before coming into a kneeling position. Now, we're going to do another heart and throat opening pose. This is going to be camel. We'll warm up a little bit more with this as well. So coming up to bring our pelvis above our knees And for the first round, we're just going to play around with leaning back from the upper body, making sure not to introduce too much of a bend, but simply having a play around with leaning back while maintaining the integrity in your alignment. So you still want your head above your heart and heart above your pelvis. So let's try that in a second. So leaning back for 2 breaths. And coming back up. This next round, you can try to do the same, but you can use your hands for a little bit more support and see if you can get a little bit deeper into the stretch. So leaning back in your own time and maybe facing up to the ceiling slightly more to further expose the throat chakra and the chest. Engage through the core and engage through the glutes. And coming back up. If you're ready, we'll go into the full variation of camel, but you can also just stick to the last couple, what we did the last couple of rounds. You have the option of either bringing your heels up a little bit higher, like tucking in your toes, or you can leave your toes tucked out, like the top of your feet will still be flush against the mat. And we'll try to go into the full variation, which involves slowly bending back the way we were the last couple of rounds before sweeping our hands back, reaching for the heels with your right and then left heel with your left hand, chest up to the sky. And if it's comfortable to do so, drop your head further so that you're looking to the back of the room. Breathing into your chest, breathing into the front of your body, opening up. And in your own time, coming back up to head over heart, heart over pelvis. Let's take a second to feel the effects of that bend before we move on to the video segment.
Coming into child's pose, let's still counter the back bend. And breathe in here for 5 breaths. And as we roll up, if you can just make sure you have your block in front of you, we're going to be moving into some balancing positions. So just rolling up and then just grabbing the block so that's in front of you. And then from here coming into all fours, and we'll just push back into downward facing dog. And then on your exhale, stepping or hopping to the top of your mat and rolling up. Raising your hands, high breath, coming down into Samasthiti and then Tadasana. So before we begin our balancing, we're just going to do some ankle raises because we're going to be on our ankles for some time. So if we can just place our hands on top of our head like so. And on our inhale, we're going to rise our arms and ankles up. Exhale, lower our hands, lower our ankles. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Now next inhale, we'll hold for 3. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Very good. And then just bringing our awareness to our pelvis here in Tadasana. You may like to place your hands on your pelvis, one in front and one behind. While we're here in our Tadasana, just being mindful we don't want our pelvis to be shooting forward. We don't want our pelvis to be shooting back. Imagining your pelvis is like a bowl of water. So we want that water to stay centered. And so just bringing awareness to your pelvis. And then finally, a final preparation before we begin our balancing is our Mula Bandha. So Sam already introduced us to our Mula Bandha, which is our root block. For men, it's located at the perineum, and for women, at the cervix, the entrance of the womb. And so this time, what we'll do is we'll inhale to engage the Mula Bandha and exhale to relax. So we'll inhale, engage, exhale, relax, inhale, engage, exhale, relax, inhale, engage, exhale, relax. Okay, so we'll begin with our first balancing pose, which is BWK 3, Warrior 3. We'll begin on our left leg, so place your right foot just halfway down the mat, and just ensure your block is in front of you, and ensuring our pelvis is parallel, sitting flat against or parallel to the mat, and gently just tilting forward. You may like to have your hands on your pelvis at first, or in Samasthiti for grounding. Engaging the Pada Bandha, 3 corners of your foot, lifting the arches, engaging the knee and the thigh, the buttocks. And then, if you're feeling comfortable, you may like to place your arms along the side of your legs or in front. Ensuring the shoulders are relaxed. And just holding here, feeling that long line of energy you're creating from the tips of your fingers to the back of your foot. The foot can be flexed. Just breathing here, ensuring the pelvis is parallel to the mat. And then from here, we're going to come into our Ardha Chandrasana, our half moon. So you may like to bring your hands back to your heart. If you want to have a bit of a rest, you can put your foot down. Otherwise, we will move straight into our half moon. This time, placing your hands on your block for support. And our pelvis is opening to the painted side of the room. Flexing the foot, shoulders are stacked, hips are stacked. Navel is coming into the spine. You may like to engage your Mula Bandha, and if you wish, the gaze can come up to the right hand. And then from here, we'll be coming into our revolved half moon. If you want to rest your leg, I know mine's a bit sore. You can bring your right leg down, have a little shake. Otherwise, we'll be coming into our revolved half moon. This time our pelvis is maintaining its parallel to the earth. Our right hand comes down and our left arm goes up. So our shoulders are stacked again and foot remains flexed. Our Parivritta Ardha Chandrasana. You may like to engage the Mula Bandha here as well. Trying to lift the back leg just a little higher. Very good. And coming back down to our forward fold and just shaking it out. You may like to sway or rock, bend the knees. And then we just take our flow. So inhale to rise. Exhale, coming forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale to plank. Chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. And exhale, downward facing dog. Now, from here, coming down, coming back forward into our plank, and we're going to lower our bodies all the way to the earth for 3, 2, 1. And just resting here. Now we are going to do the locust again. Sorry. But this time, as our intention is the throat, we're going to bring our energetic awareness to our throat and the heart and the connection that Sam spoke about. So as we rest here, just a reminder, our shoulder blades are blackened down, relaxing through the jaw, engaging through the buttocks and the thighs and the knees. And we'll do 3 repetitions before we hold our locust for 5 breaths. So placing your arms by your side, taking an exhale here, and on your next inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. And this time we'll be holding for 5 breaths and bringing our energetic awareness to the region of our heart and throat chakra. Taking an exhale. Inhale, lift. And holding here. And exhaling, lowering down. Coming back into our child's pose. And this time we'll roll back up into our 3-legged dog. I'm not our downward facing dog. Just staying here for a couple of breaths, rolling the shoulders back and down. Bringing the belly to the thighs, engaging through Padabanda. The hand above that. And on your next inhale, stepping or jumping to the front of your mat. And we'll inhale to rise. Exhale, Samasthiti. Alright, so we'll do balancing on our right leg now. So again, just shifting our weight to our right leg, engaging through the 4 corners of our feet, lifting the arches, placing your left leg behind you, and then tilting forward into your warrior 3, ensuring the pelvis is parallel to the earth. Relaxing the shoulders. You may like to bring your hands to the side, lifting the belly into the spine. You are welcome to bring your hands forward. Bring your arms up into the ears if possible. engaging through the thighs, flexing the foot. And from here we'll move into our Adha Chandrasana, our half moon. You may like to use the block for this. Placing our right hand down, opening the pelvis to the window side, and stacking the shoulders. Engaging the Mula Bandha. And then from here we'll move into our revolved half moon, placing the left hand down this time, leveling the pelvis so it's parallel to the earth, and stacking the shoulders again, flexing the foot. And coming back down, bringing the knee to your chest and then lowering, and then just hanging here in your forward fold. I like to check it out. And then from here, we'll rise up to full high prayer. Come down into Samasthiti. And then bring your hands down into Tadasana. Bring your awareness back to that heart and throat connection. Using the breath. Taking an exhale. Do that next inhale, rise up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plank, hold. Exhale into our chaturanga. And inhale to upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. And from here we'll come into our plank and then we're going to lower our bodies again for 3, 2, and 1. And this time we'll also do our bow. And so remembering to relax the jaw, bringing our awareness to our heart and our throat. Taking hold of your ankles or your feet. And on your next inhale, rise. And holding here, breathing, trying to bring the knees and the thighs together. Lifting the head slightly, relaxing the face. Lifting higher. Keeping the resistance between your knees. And on your next exhale, lowering down. And coming into our child's pose again. From here, we'll just find our way onto a seated position, anywhere you like. And extending your legs out into our Dandasana. And because we have done some balancing, it might be good, you may like to rotate your ankles one direction, lengthening through the spine, rotating that direction. Ankles can go forward and back, like cracking. Okay. I believe. So we'll take our left knee up to our bodies, placing it over our right leg, and doing your best to ensure your knees are in line. And if this feels comfortable for you, you're welcome to bring your right leg back. And then just grounding into your sit bones, lengthening through the spine. And we'll take our right arm behind our back, left arm from the top, and maybe good to make use of the strap that you have. And just lengthening through the spine, raising the head, relaxing the neck. Sukhasana, a cow face. And if you feel comfortable, you may also like to begin to slowly tilt forward from the hips, maintaining the integrity of your spine. Tilting forward with each exhale. With inhale, you may like to back off a little, lengthen. Exhale, sink a little deeper. On your next inhale, tilting back up, uncurling our legs, coming back into Tadasana. I'm going to shake it out a little. And then we'll move on to the other side. So bringing our right knee up to our chest, bringing it over the left leg, ensuring the knees are as lined as much as possible. You may like to stay here, or you can bring that left leg under the right. Grounding into the sitting bones, lengthening the spine, bringing our left arm to the back, our right arm across, and linking them if possible. You're welcome to use the strap. Raising up through the neck. And then again, if you wish, you may like to begin tilting your body forward. Inhaling, lengthening. Exhaling, sinking a little deeper. On your next inhale, rise up. Untangle the legs. Come into your Tadasana, and then I'll pass you over to Ruben.
Thanks, Lydia. We're going to start winding down now. So I'd like to invite everybody to come into Sukhasana, where we're going to be sitting on our tailbones, and we are going to bring our left foot on top of our right. And we're going to start grounding down, elongating the spine, and we're going to do this by taking a deep breath in, straightening our back, dropping our shoulders, and dropping back into our space in our bodies. I'd like to invite everybody to take a deep breath and close their eyes. And as we're focusing on the throat chakra today, we're going to let silence be our medicine. We're going to stay here for 5 breaths. Each round, slowly drawing it out longer, breathing in deeper, oxygenating your body, and slowly exhaling. more breaths. With your eyes closed, we're going to come into butterfly pose. So very slowly and mindfully bringing the soles of your feet in together, touching. And we want to bring the heels as close to our groin as possible. Maintaining connection to the breath. And we're going to stay here for another 5 breaths. And I really want to encourage you to lengthen the breath, make it a little deeper, a little longer, exhaling a little slower. With each round, as mindfully as possible, allow your knees to come closer to the floor. Listening to your body, opening up the groins and the hips, and just finding that point where you challenge yourself, but there's no pain. 2 more breaths. Last one. And once you've finished your exhale, slowly opening up the eyelids and opening up the legs 90 degrees. We're coming into a wide forward bend. Again, you don't want to compromise back in the positive. That everybody can really come in, straightening up the back, elongating the spine, having the legs out as wide as possible. Again, just finding that point to challenge, but there's no pain. You're going to rotate the shoulders to the right as we breathe in. We exhale, over to the right, on the right hand, the right side, and the left hand side, the left side, the left, the right side. Again, breathing in, very length, and as we exhale, move down, the torso coming towards the knee, without compromising the integrity of the spine. Really feel the stretch. You can flex your left leg, bringing your left toes into the torso. Continue to connect to the breath. And with each breath in, bringing in the length, and exhale, coming a little bit deeper. We're just going to stay here for 2 more breaths and switch to the other side. Come a little bit deeper as you can. Last breath. And slowly coming back upright. Shake it out a little bit before we switch sides. And we're going to come over to the back. We're going to breathe in. As we breathe out, we're going to rotate to the left, and then our left hand will be planted next to our left thigh, our right hand on the inside. Again, breathing in, shoulders should be facing the left foot and slowly bending forward, hinging at the hips, and bringing your torso as close to your knee as possible. If you feel any pain, be sure to back them off. And it's a wonderful opportunity with each exhale becoming a little deeper. Just finding that movement within your body. Two more breaths. You can come down a little bit further. Now's the time. Last breath. Coming back up. We're just going to meet in the seated position. Butterfly pose. Shake it out. We're going to be here alone. And we're going to put the ass and bridge pose. So from here, we're going to extend our legs. Down. We're going to have our hands up behind us. Make sure that you've got everything stabilized. And then we are clearing breath out. And we're going to breathe in and bring up hips. We're going to be here for 5 breaths. Make sure you're not dumping the weight into your wrist. Pushing down your heels and using your abs. Make sure that's controlled. And connected to your one breath. 3 more breaths. You can bring your hips to the side now. 3 more breaths. Last one. And with your arms, bring your hips back down to the ground. We meet back into the butterfly, shake it out. And now I'm going to come down to our mat. We got 2 more poses. We're going to bring our right knee into our chest and our left leg extended. Breathing in into our chest. And then swapping sides. The left. Connecting to the back. Breaking up the hip. And swapping back to the right. This time, slowly bring the right knee over to the left side, having the left hand on the right knee. Make sure your shoulders are planted into the earth, connecting to your breath, creating a space in your body. Just to sink a little bit deeper, a little bit further into the mat. We're here for 2 breaths. Slowly coming back, moving both knees into the chest, extending your left leg when you're ready, bringing your left leg into the chest and turning to the side, rotating well, making sure your shoulders are firmly hips on the floor, breathing in 2 more breaths. And in your own time, come back up, breathing in. If you want to do a half baby before you come into Shavasana, you're more than welcome to. And breathing in Shavasana. Big exhale and landing on the mat. Eyes closed. We're going to start tracking our breath, feeling the touch of the breath exiting the nostrils, feeling the touch of the breath entering the nostrils. Like guardians at the gate, you're aware of every single breath coming in, and you're aware of every single breath going out. And as you're focusing on the breath, slowly coming to the tips of your toes, feeling your toes, starting with your big toe, making your way to all your other little toes, starting with your left leg, feeling your feet, your left foot, having awareness around your left ankle, your left heel, feeling the wood or your mat making contact with your left heel, and slowly working off to your left calf, creating awareness around your left calf, feeling the point of contact with the surface area of the mat, meeting your left calf, and slowly working up to your left hamstring, and your thigh, feeling the floor underneath your body, to your left glute, feeling the earth underneath your left glute, coming up to your left hip, the left side of your back, along your shoulder blades, and making contact with your mat. Feel your shoulder is touching you, and bringing the awareness into your left arm. It might be your tricep, might be your bicep, touching the mat, going into your elbow, into your forearm, to the back of your hand, up to the front of your hand. And feeling your fingers within your fingers. I'm going to invite you to do the right side yourself. Starting off with the right foot with the toes and slowly working up the right side of the body. Sinking a little deeper into yourself, into the space that you've created for yourself. Slowly start to connect to your breath, expanding your chest, bringing your awareness into your hands, your fingers by giving them a little wiggle, bringing your awareness into your toes by giving them a little wiggle. On your next breath in, raising your hands above your head, stretching out behind you, pointing with your feet, stretching out your legs, and back into your belly. And when you're ready, on your next breath in, rolling over to the side, our community is taking a moment's breath to that. And ever so gently pushing into your hands, sitting up across legs. If you'd like to sit on a blanket, we're going to close the practice with the open eye. We're going to take a clearing breath out. Breathe in, hold breath out. We're going to breathe in for all. Bring your hands to the bring your hands at your feet. We bow. We bow to the ground. We bow to the ground. Namaste.
Awesome. Do you want a break? And then quick feedback from
That balancing sequence is good and challenging. Done something different, but I was like, I don't know what else to do because Ruben said this one thing, and there's like so much crossover, so like I had some.
I think we all just went, what's the throat opening? And then they were like, oh yeah, focus, go. Yeah, I had the head tilting one as well. Oh, it's slow.
Trying to agree what you're saying. Sam smile. Are you guys in Queensland?
Yeah, we're in Queensland. Yeah.
When did you move?
We got here like a few days ago. Maybe like 3 days. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice weather.
Beautiful. But we're hot.
Yeah, like 29.
But like humid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different, yeah.
All right, well done, guys. That was actually such a nice class. I was really blown away. Really beautiful class. Really well thought out. With the little warning you had to get this sorted, and obviously you must have communicated with something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's very impressive. Now we did go quite over time, and well, actually, all of you, except for Anwesha. Anwesha's the only one who stuck to her time. She did it. I was checking the times.
Mickey, you do know how long Sam went for? Just wonder.
She went probably the longest over time, yeah. She was about 25 minutes, I think. Something like that. But you went over time too, and so did you, Lydia.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, no big deal for what we're doing here, but just remember that ultimately that is a big deal in the real world. So, yeah, be mindful of your time always. You know, sometimes it just means that you need to, along the way, leave things out that you planned. You know, don't be attached to your plans all the time. You know, let go of things that you need to. But yeah, apart from that, it was one really beautiful thing throughout, and such beautiful attention to detail, all of you, without fail. It was much better with Sam's device than your device, Ruben, to hear you. So maybe just
I'm not surprised, but that makes sense. Yeah, we'll make sure that we get in touch with someone.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah. So yeah, that was just, yeah, I think we struggled a little bit to hear you clearly.
I think Sam speaks louder than me as well, but I do the advice also.
Yeah.
I think also Ruben's voice is lower, so the lower the whatever that measurement is, the harder it's to speak in a high pitched voice.
Just because of time, I'd like to just a real quick feedback, not too much in depth, just because otherwise we'll bite into our lecture time. But if we can just go around maybe, and everyone just say a couple of things that you liked about anyone, like anything in particular that you really enjoyed, and a couple of things, you know, if you have any constructive feedback for anyone, if you felt someone, you know, could have done something differently or whatnot, that would be great. So just not specifically going through everyone one by one, but everyone saying a little something about someone. So yeah, and even about yourself if you like. Yeah. So Sam, can you go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is hard to do it like this.
Yeah, sorry to make it this way. I'm just mindful of the time.
Like I have to go through everyone and work out. I might need some time actually. Yeah, like I can't. My brain's like it's too much. Yeah.
That's right. Pass.
I can say for Sam, I think the balls were really good. I really like that she focused on the back of the heart. I think she was on point there with the sort of emphasis on the front of the heart. That was really good. Definitely lost me with the straps there, but that's just my own limitations with my body. It's goes to show there's more work that has to be done. And yeah, it's like I definitely felt it going for a little while, and so like all of us except Anwish John, we went over time, but yeah, those balls were like amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say something because I remember so with Ruben, yeah, like it was a really nice slowing down of the class, and I'd never done the rotation with the seated wide angle. Like I think I've always just gone forward, so that was good having the rotation. And I really liked the guided Shavasana. There was just one thing was that when the breaths were guided, sometimes you would say like take a breath in, but you weren't guiding the breath out. You then kept talking, so there was a little bit of like breath cue thing going on, as well as like when we were in seated wide angle, we were facing the right, but you said flex your left leg. So again, there was like left and right.
Okay, I'll just respond to that. Hoping that by flexing the left leg, that could be an anchor to like come forward into the right. But
Okay.
I obviously didn't
Yeah.
explain that very well. Okay.
Good one. No, good feedback. Unless anything.
Yeah, I'm gonna move a little closer. Yeah, I really thought that the class had a good combination of forward folding and opening. And yeah, just in general, but yeah, I really like how you mentioned things around focusing on the chakra prior to getting into a deep pose. I found that really helped, because normally if I'm like 5 breaths of reverse plank or something, I'll go to oh no mode, and it helps to think about the chakras so you focus on energy as opposed to emotion. Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's because I've been really lax with my practice, but I feel like a little bit more of a warm-up before the Vikasana would have helped me personally. And yeah, I feel like camel to balancing directly personally for me was a little bit challenging today. Yeah. But it was a very beautiful class altogether though. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, everyone did so beautiful, and it's amazing to see how far everyone's coming. Like, yeah, especially you, Lydia, even with your voice and your projection, I really noticed a lot more strength there, and same with you as well. Your confidence was shining through a lot more, and it was beautiful. It was so nice. I loved Sam, the creativity with the strap and like the legs up in the air, and I find that your creativity with that is always, really good. I love that. Feedback. I can't think of any.
It's fine. Good. Thanks, Kirsty.
Sam, I like your acupuncturist. Always receiving the sage advice from the acupuncturist. I like the heart and the throat. That was really good, and I like doing pranayama to begin with at the beginning. I think like pranayama is something we can be quite technical and pedantic about. It's easy to because we can have the numbers. So I think like perhaps like there were times maybe where we were doing 9 rather than 7, like technically, but like it was all very like well spoken and like clear as well. So that's the only thing there. As for myself, I knew that going from count to balancing would be really weird. Like because I just wanted to do balancing though, so I was just like, alright. And then I was like when Anwesha did the locus and the bow, I was like I should think of something else. But then I was like, I had thought of some other things, and this morning Ruben texted his sequence and like about 4 or 5 and it also overlapped. So I was like, oh, I don't know what else I can do. So I was like, that's alright, we'll just do it again.
I think it actually worked nicely because, I guess this was one of those classes, generally let's say you've got a flow where the curve goes from low to high and then back down. But this was a bit more like one of those ones with a hump, which is fine. It's great. It's good to do that occasionally to mix things up. And so even though Campbell would after those back bends, you might think, okay, now we're going to slow down.
Yeah.
But to come back up and do some standing postures, why not?
Yeah.
I think that's actually, you wouldn't do it all the time, but occasionally doing something like that's really nice. And then to actually then bring back in some of the postures that we'd already explored, I thought was good. And in a way it worked really well because Anwesha really took her time to break it down, give us the grounds and you know, get into it, get used to it, and then by the time it came to you, just tap into it, so you didn't need as much time to explore it, just revisit it essentially.
Yeah, I liked Anwesha the requirements that he provided in the author going up into Bow. Like there was lots of different like leveling up, and then also the cattle. I really liked that. That was really good. Yeah. And then Ruben, I like going from butterfly into this like wide seated angle thing, wide or seated angle. I think it's like nice because first you're opening up the hips and then you're extending them. So I think that's like really well thought out. Yeah.
And Gemma, most of you probably don't know Gemma, but she's been in a parallel universe doing the same as you guys have been for the last 5 months. So she was in one of the part of the Carnegie group, which is obviously shut down now. So technically she's meant to be doing Fridays here now with Amy, because that would be more to the schedule, but she hasn't done. Because we kind of reverse those schedules of Fridays to what you guys are doing now. They did and what you guys did till now. They didn't do till now. That's it's kind of flipped. It's flipped. The schedule's flipped. But more or less, because Amy then sometimes does something completely different off the schedule. Even I change it up occasionally. And then if we revisit lectures, it's absolutely fine. That's actually really useful. So Gemma's going to just, I think, drop in occasionally and revisit things here. And,
Hey, Gemma.
Hey, Ruben.
Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, Gemma, anything to add or say?
I don't really have any feedback at the moment, but I really enjoyed everyone's individual teaching. I feel like it focused on a lot of different aspects. So like the acupuncture ball really, because I've got a really tight back, I enjoyed that a lot. I feel like a bit more time having the ball under the back would have been more beneficial. It was pretty short. Apart from that, I really enjoyed everyone's individual teaching. Yeah, it's good to meet you all too.
Thanks, Gemma. Yeah, I would have loved more time there too, but then I was thinking, Jesus Christ, she's already 20 minutes. No, but really wonderful, everyone. Little nitbits that I could pick out was a couple of times I noticed, and this is something to really take note of carefully, all of you, is timing when we're doing a pose on two sides. When we're doing it on the left and then the right. It's a very natural thing to kind of to do it more on the first side. It's just a natural tendency. Often because on the first side you're maybe giving more cues, you're explaining, you're bringing them into it, and then what happens is that when you go to the other side, you don't do it as long. It's a natural tendency that is a common trait among all yoga teachers, and it's just something we've got to be really, really mindful of as best we can. We need to balance it out, because otherwise we're just going to be, whichever side you tend to start with, and usually it's the right, that's going to be the stronger, more flexible side, and then we're not doing what we set out to do really here in yoga, is to create that balance between the two sides. Person to person, if someone's weak in one side, maybe they need more time on that side, but we don't know who's, that will differ from everyone. So when you're doing your own practice, this is what I was taught, when you do your own practice at home, you know yourself which side needs more attention. So you maybe you do your own practice at home where you focus a little longer on the side that needs more attention. But when you're teaching a class, we can't do that. I mean, unless we give the option, like, do your bad side first, do your good side now, and then do your bad side again. You could do something fun like that if you wanted to. But otherwise, really being mindful of both sides at the same time. So yeah, that's just one thing to really be mindful of.
Nikki, can I just ask a question off the bat of that? Like,
Yeah.
in terms of like holding a pose, like, how do you, or what would be your recommendation for knowing like how long to do it, you know? Like, so how, like, would you count, because I was thinking maybe I'll just count breaths, but after I've said words already, like, you know, then the breath counts, and I could have, as we've discussed, said a lot more words in the first side than the other side. So how do you know, like, when, like, even how to do that?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and it's something that just takes practice, I guess. Yeah, it depends what you're teaching and how you're teaching to some degree. Like when we're doing, let's say, a vinyasa flow, and it's all about, you know, being in rhythm, in time, and that's another element of vinyasa that you want to always time the breath with the movement. So, you know, you inhale up, you exhale down, inhale out, and exhale back in, or whatever movement you're doing. In that respect, then you know, it's harder to, of course, get those cues in. And that's often the difference between, let's say, a classic hatha class and a vinyasa class. Is in the hatha class, okay, we're going to stay in the pose for a while, we're going to explore it, we're going to give lots of cues and lots of, you know, pointers in the pose. But in a vinyasa flow, it's all about, you know, it's that moving meditation that we're trying to achieve in a way. And so we've got less opportunity to give those cues and to explore the pose, but you still can to some degree. So, you know, you inhale into warrior two, and you exhale, make sure you roll the shoulders back. Inhale, just check that front knee. Exhale, you know, but then, you know, those cues have got to be really well timed and placed still rhythmically within the, you know, the structure of the rhythm and how you're speaking, how you're instructing. But you know, you can still, it doesn't have to be super like that all the time. You know, if you feel like you need to explore this pose a bit, bring it into the pose, let go of those, let go of the breath cues and explore the pose. So when it's warrior two, you know, roll the shoulders back, you know, open up the hips, breathing your own time for now. You know, tell people that's what we're doing. And you know, that left foot back, the right foot up, or whatever cues you want to give. But then you've got to remember, okay, if we've done that on that side, when we get to the other side, we've got to do it again. So maybe you just remind them, okay, we're back on the left side now, let's remember those cues that we explored on the other side. We're going to again, revisit the shoulders back, left foot up, right foot down, that way. Or, potentially, onto the left side, you know the cues, just breathe and feel the pose. Then you've got to really kind of try and remember, okay, how long will we be there on each side? And that's just practice. I mean, if you really wanted to do it well, practice yourself in front of the mirror at home, record yourself and time it. You know, time yourself talking, time yourself just being there, and see if you can guess the timing. But yeah, it's a great question, and it's not a simple answer, because it depends how you're teaching it, what the intention is. Are we just staying in a pose to explore it, or are we going to get this flow happening into what else was it? Yeah, that's it. That's nice. Really, as I said, I really enjoy. I think you all did a wonderful job. It's really well structured class. Como casa? that's on top, the opposite arm goes on.
Yeah, I was trying to work this out in the morning and I thought I had it. Yeah, like hang on.
So if you,
Yeah.
your right leg's on top, then your left arm is the arm that goes up. Your right one behind.
See, I had it in my brain wrong. I was looking at the left, like the bottom one, and I was looking at the pictures on Google. It was so confusing. I thought it was this, but it's
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not, these things are not absolutes again. You go, I mean, it'd be interesting to Google it, and we'll probably get some people doing it that way. Some people won't.
Yeah, okay.
But I reckon you'll get more people doing it that way.
So
with the
just
opposite.
a reminder that the top leg is the one that same
No,
top.
opposite.
Opposite, okay.
Top leg, opposite arm.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah.
I can never do that pose. I feel like
I struggle.
I can always get small knees. I feel like maybe I'm too wide.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
a good crowd, a good cue for that is to give them the opportunity to sit up higher and block. That will take away some of that pressure. Or, you know, you said if you did that, but you know, just maybe a reminder that you can move one leg as well. But otherwise, sitting high. Try sitting high. That's
Like that's too big. It just doesn't feel like I feel it in my knees.
yeah, well done.
My anatomy's just like, no.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that I thought everyone can do because I guess I just have the anatomy for it, and then just one time I was writing it and everyone in my class was like, what? What are you doing? So yeah, really beautiful.
Yeah, it's actually it's a strong
Even in you.
and a difficult pose. I mean, the pose is a very strong pose.
Yeah.
It's actually, it looks, looks like it's anything else. So you're lifting an arm up, but it's a strong pose. There's a lot of people just can't get used to something. So, yeah. It's a beautiful pose. But yeah, always keep some options in that. Okay, we'll break in a sec for lunch, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a rundown on the plan of action for the next little while, as things have, we've lost our 5-monthers that they've left. They graduated last weekend. It was a beautiful graduation. Nice to have them all up there. So we've got this new intake coming in. And so ideally, if they were meant to come in as the other ones left, to fit in with the schedule. But there was a stall for whatever reason to get them in at the start of February. I think we're still working on a few people coming in and not being able to join straight away, so Amy sort of extended it out a little bit. And now I'm going away for 2 weeks, the next 2 weeks. I'm still planning to run our lectures, but Zooming them myself. But then it wasn't ideal to have them start on Zoom. You know how it is when you start, you want to be in person if you're able to, so we don't get that connection. So then I was going to start, I made a suggestion to the group. So we've already got a new group chat, which we will combine with you guys, but not yet, because you're still doing your own thing for now. They haven't started yet, but once we start, we'll combine the group chat. And some of them will be kind of doing 5 months, and some of them will be doing 10 months. So some of them will end up graduating with you guys, and some of them will be like you guys, doing another 5 months afterwards. So then I gave them the option. I said, well, guys, you could start this week, as in today. Ideally not in the next 2 weeks, or else you could start the week after that. And then a whole bunch were saying, oh, I'm going to pitch, I'm going to esoteric, festival time. So basically I said, well, look, here's the option. I'm going to let you guys decide when you want to start. So they're going to start the weekend after esoteric now.
Great.
After esoteric. So yeah, it's another month away until they begin.
Is it a big group? Is there a lot of them?
I'm not 100% sure. Probably not. It's probably about the same as you guys again.
Yeah.
So we'll probably try the size. Well, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who's doing just Saturday. I think everyone's been put together. Some of them just in five. So it might not be maybe 3 or 4. So yeah, so that's the plan. They come in on whatever that weekend is, 18th or something, I think. Today we're exploring the 8 limbs of yoga, which it's actually a really important lecture. It's a really important topic because it's really the essence of what we're doing. And we don't have a lot of time to explore it, but my plan today is to actually read a little bit through Patanjali, through the sutras, and really get his take on it. And then what I'd like to do is to explore it further, to go into a little more depth, is I'm going to then hand each and every one of you I'm going to look at the yamas and niyamas more so give you all a yama or niyama to take away, and your homework becomes for the next 2 weeks is to explore that yama niyama, and then in 2 weeks' time give us a little presentation on that. So you guys go deeper into just one of them, and a different one for each of you, and then you give us a little presentation in whichever way you want to be presenting it. So your creativity to present it. And so that's going to be, so you've got 2 weeks to do that. That homework. So 2 weeks homework to do that. Present. So between 20 and 30 minutes, if you can. So you could even teach a little sequence if you wanted to, and incorporate that yama niyama can be incorporated into the sequence. You could just give us a lecture. You could do a multimedia presentation on the screen. Up to you guys. Think about it. I know you won't be here.
Wait, so if it's 2 weeks' time, is that the weekend of ESO?
No, the weekend before.
Yep, so I will be
You won't be here, so you'll just present the weekend of this.
Yep. So are you actually going to be...
I'm here the weekend there, so no, I'm going to esoteric after TT.
Oh, so you're going to ESO on Sunday then?
On the Sunday night.
Saturday night. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I guess we'll check in to see how long. Is anyone else going away for that weekend?
I'm trying to figure out, because I have Festival of Woods to 7th of March, so that's not this week. I can let you know.
That's the other week.
Yeah.
We're going to Chihuahua.
Yes,
All right, that's the week. That's the weekend I would have liked you guys to present. But if you're not here then those who can present that weekend, we can split them up.
I won't be here on 12th. I have a wedding.
That's ESO.
Yeah.
It's a very weekend.
Yeah.
Gemma, you going to be around?
I'm not too sure yet. I think I'll be around, yeah.
And you guys are here. Well, you guys are there, but you'll be around. Cool. Well, look, we'll just work it out as far as who's here. We'll work out a schedule. Who knows who's going to be here? They can present them, and the others can present them. Cool. Well, that was it for that. And then, as I said, on the 19th or 18th, whatever that weekend, we've got a new lot. And they might need a little bit of babysitting So we'll do a little round introduction. We'll share a circle to start with them. And it'd be great for you guys to also be able to share with them what, where you're at with them, how experiences has affected you so far, and something like that. Give them some inspiration, I guess. And then what we might look at the schedule, what I planned for that weekend, but there was a revisit of sun salutes because it's good for them to do that early in the piece. So I might even get you guys to sort of teach that and inspire. Cool.
Is it possible to send the schedule again on your personal schedule, or is it doesn't change?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to redo the schedule now.
Yeah, that's good luck with that.
Because of the shifts and the extended schedule, and then I was going to try and make it friendlier for these guys too, because they will be coming down occasionally. So I was going to keep in mind when they'll be down, what lectures would be better for them to be in-house. So there'll be a little reshuffling of the schedule. So once I do that,
no
I'll
worries, all good. It's a big task. Cool.
So 2:25, Jesus, let's come back at 10 past 3.
I have to cut off, but I've actually done the 8 limbs with you at the last retreat. You did but I will catch up on the recording. I'll do the 20-minute whenever 2 overtime's not on.
We'll see.
Okay, so.
Where's that? What is it?
It's just a small.
Yeah.
All right, so 10 past 3, we'll be back, guys.
You're getting dressed up for. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so this book, Light on the Yoga Sutras themselves. I mean, we've done a lecture on them before, haven't we? We looked at mostly at the first chapter, Pada 1. We were looking at the qualities of the mind, and we may have just briefly got an overview of the different padas. So padas are the chapters, we could say. So there's 4 padas in the Yoga Sutras. The first one is Samadhi Pada, which is kind of an overview of where we're going into Samadhi, with then looking quite deeply at the mind itself. And then the second pada is I guess it's the roadmap. So it's the instructions of how do we get to the end goal? How do we get to Samadhi? And that's the 8 limbs of yoga. And basically you've got those 8 limbs, and the first 5 limbs are grouped together and called your sadhana. Your sadhana is is essentially your practice, you could say. And then in the last one, the Buddhipada. So those three together are called. Blank now. What is it? Samayana. Samayama. So your sadhana, your practice is the first 5. So the first 5 limbs are what we practice, what we do, and then the last 3 limbs are kind of like the results of that practice, and that's the samayama. So the last three limbs are in the third pada, and then it goes into an exploration of some of the siddhis or gifts or powers that we might receive from that experience of samadhi, and then the last one, Kaivalya pada, is going kind of deeper into that and deeper into the state of, I guess, enlightenment or self-realization. Because we can, samadhi is kind of, in some ways, it's seen as the end goal. Samadhi, you reach this state of bliss. But, we can have samadhi states all the time. We can have tastes of samadhi all the time. Just purely in experiencing life, like just sitting out in nature, seeing an amazing, beautiful bird. When you have that moment, that non-dual moment of awareness, where it's like the object and the subject separation dissolves. A beautiful bird flies up, and in that moment of wonder, those kind of wow moments, that's like a mini samadhi moment. And we experience that all the time. Just through the senses, through the experience of being out in the world. And that's kind of, in many ways, that's the tantric aspect of experiencing divinity. But we can also experience those places of non-dual awareness with the eyes closed when you go into your deep meditation. And when the mind drops away and you feel that deep inner presence, and it can evolve into a blissful state. So it can just be a touch of non-dual awareness tasting, let's say, but that can evolve into actually a blissful, ecstatic, ecstasy as well, and that's samadhi. And so, of course, to be able to go deeper into samadhis, we need to do all that other groundwork first, because if the mind is really active, well, then the samadhis, is not there. The mind actually needs to take a chill pill, be on hold, for the samadhi to really be fully experienced. Kaivalya, so the last chapter, Kaivalya Pada, is, it's nice to experience samadhi states. It's nice to have that non-dual awareness and that taste, those wonderful tastes. Lydia and I were just having a chat over lunchtime about like medicines, for example, ayahuasca and soba and mushrooms and things like that. People can use them in a ceremonious way to also have a taste of samadhi. They can open us up to that wonderful experience, which can be wonderful, if that's our purpose. In some ways, is to reach those samadhi states. But it's not gonna. That's not gonna awaken us to a self-realized state. Self-realization is actually being able to drop into that all the time, to be awake to that oneness always, and that's not going to be achieved through that. I mean, it can be. There's no guarantee as to what's the formula to reach enlightenment. I mean, if there was, we'd all be just following that formula, and we'd all be there. Enlightenment can happen to anyone, anytime, without necessarily doing any work. Like, Eckhart Tolle's the famous awakened soul who just, woke up one day on a park bench, awake, enlightened, without having done any prior work. But certainly we have a greater chance, opportunity, if we follow some kind of, set out groundwork that's designed to some degree for that purpose. And that's what the Yoga Sutras are. And that's what we're doing here. That's what our practice is really all about. You know, we sometimes don't realise that until we come and study it into these depths. You know, we think, oh, yoga's nice practice of getting the body healthy and vital, and you know, makes you feel good. And yeah, I'd love to be a yoga teacher because it looks like a good thing to do. And then you come and you start to realise that it's all about reaching this state of of enlightenment, of self-realisation, the ultimate path.
So just a question, so like when we speak of samadhi, is that the non-dual awareness?
Yes, it is, but there's and that's what some of the later parts of that chapter talk about, the different types of samadhi. There's actually, we can just have like a little taste of samadhi, but then you have, I think it's Kaivalya samadhi is essentially the samadhi that then awakens you to the awakened state. Self-realized state. So that's why we can throw around that word sometimes. Yeah, I'm having a little samadhi right now, feeling great, feeling pretty ecstatic. But it's only a taste of samadhi. And then there's that whole Kundalini part as well, which we've also looked at, which also brings about a state of samadhi as well, and can awaken us to that non-dual enlightened state as well. But even with Kundalini, you can have tastes, Kundalini movements, which aren't necessarily ongoing or permanent, just little drop-ins, you could say. So the eightfold path, the 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, is the formula set out by Patanjali. And let's have a little read of what he says. So before even reading the actual sutras, and we won't obviously go and read them all, but we'll read a couple at least. This book I find is a really good book to give us both, when you want to read the sutras, to read them, to read the translation, to then read the transliteration. I think Ayeni does a pretty good job. But then it's also got the chapters before they even start the sutras, which kind of give us a nice kind of summary. And so it's good to start there, I think. So if we go to page 29 on the book, at the bottom of page 29 is the chapter on the yogic disciplines, which is our eightfold path. So we'll just have a bit of a breeze through that to get that kind of overview first. So the yogic disciplines are yama, which is restraint, and niyama, practice or observances. These disciplines channel the energies of the organs of action and the senses of perception in the right direction. Then there is asana, which most people think is what yoga is all about, which is posture, which results in the balance and the stillness of mind and power to penetrate the intelligence. So even in this little summary, if you think about it, it doesn't even mention that asana is actually designed for the body, which we in the West are obsessed with that. And it's all about making the body strong, flexible and healthy. We know, of course, it does that, but from this point of view, that's not even the main purpose. So the asana actually helps to balance and still the mind. And through asana we learn to know the body well and to distinguish between motion and action. Motion excites the mind while action absorbs it. maybe a little pause there. What does that mean? Motion excites the mind while action absorbs it. So when we're thinking of an asana, what's the difference you think between motion and action within an asana?
So when you're taking action, it's a conscious effort, like you're conscious, but when you're just going through the motions, in a way, it's kind of like an you can go through the motions and be a little bit unconscious and caught up in the mind. But when you're taking action, it feels like it's more of a conscious, like you're pulling your mind down into the actions. So your mind and your actions are one.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. That's a good explanation. Motion excites the mind, and the action absorbs it.
Absorbs the mind, is that right?
So, I mean, the way I see that, pretty much what you said there, but we could look at it at a slightly different angle in the sense that the motion of coming into a pose is you know, like coming into Warrior 2, the motion is, you know, bringing the arms out and bending the front knee and doing all the motions to be in the pose. But then the actions might be, so the motion is kind of like, oh yeah, I'm getting into this pose, and that's exciting my mind in that I'm excited to be in this pose. Yeah, here I am in Warrior 2. But then the action is like, okay, well now that I'm in the pose, let's go deeper. So what, you know, that's the cues. That's the little like, actually, well, I need to move that shoulder back a bit. I can feel that little thing in my, you know, so that's the mind going, what does it say there? Going deeper into, absorbs it, you know, the mind being absorbed into the pose is that action. So, you know, something like that, but just, I guess, showing how important that connection is between the mind and the asana, and how that's really what makes the asana yoga rather than just purely exercise. Even though, of course, even in purely exercise, you would still have motion and action, I guess. Ideally, you could definitely have exercise with no consciousness and more motion than action. But that's where it becomes maybe more uniquely yoga, motion and action in that sense. So we'll go a little more into yamas and niyamas in a second, because, you know, they are, it says restraint and practices or observances. They're also seen as kind of like the ethical guidelines to living, yamas and niyamas. They're like our 10 commandments, you could say, to a good, to an ideal way of living from the yogic perspective, from being a good yogi. Now, one thing just to consider when we're reading this, and from when this was written, you know, he wrote this 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, and it's kind of directed at the yogi who's the recluse, the yogi who actually steps away from the world. So we need to sometimes take it all with a grain of salt, or, you know, bring it back into, well, how can I relate that to my situation? You know, I want to be a yogi, and there's no reason why I still can't be self-realized. But, you know, this was written from that perspective of you know, the yogi who actually steps away from the world. The renunciates the world. The renunciate.
Can I say something on that? We have a family friend who, he's like grown up in like the Italian lifestyle and like had to be like the provider and the man in his family. And he met a guru and started down the path of yoga. And I guess for him, he couldn't, pretty much the path of yoga was drawing him away from the life that he created because it just changed his life. So he had to like decide which path he wanted to go down. He didn't actually, but he decided which path to go down. He chose his family because he didn't want to leave them. But now he doesn't do yoga at all. And because he couldn't integrate the two together.
Yes.
It was so powerful what he learned and what he gained. But I think what he was telling me that she was saying to him was, like, she was saying to him that you've got to leave your partner, like, they're not supporting who you are, and, you know, and I was like, yeah, when I heard that, I'm like, I feel like that's not really a guru's right to tell someone what they need to do.
Yeah, something fishy about that, I reckon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fishy gurus out there. It's not, you know, probably not intentionally.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that they're a little bit, you know,
too much power in their voice.
Yeah, just lost in their own vision of what these things should be. You know, like I think that's the confusion sometimes of the spiritual path. Is that we get an idea of how things should be, and then, you know,
try to encourage other people to take that path, and then it can send someone down that spiral. Like he went through really dark times because of it, which is the total opposite of what the journey is supposed to bring.
Yep.
Can I say something? That's really interesting that you share that. And I know with the Vipassana, they have their own kind of prophecy about how spirituality is re-entering the world on a more mainstream level. And this is kind of the era for the layman. So householders learning this high spiritual path, but definitely not leaving the world. This is the time, the age, I'm sure it lines up in the yugas somewhere, where it's actually, we're exposed to all these amazing spiritual techniques and modalities. However, we still have the responsibilities to work, to show up, to have families and all of that, and to basically embody the monk lifestyle, but doing it as a householder, which is really hard because as a renunciate, there's schools of thought where they kind of have it easy. I don't think they have it easy. It's all relative. But there's a lot of work that we have to do on top of our other duties as being a partner, a son, somebody working in the community. Yeah, so it's interesting. And it's a shame that he wasn't offered that opportunity to integrate it. It was all or nothing.
Yeah. No, you're spot on there, Ruben. I think that's exactly it. You know, it's easier in a way to be a renunciate the world, just go and live in a cave or an ashram, and then all the things that obviously that you need to work on, you just kind of, again, just sort of brushing them under the carpet in a way, because because you're not actually working them in real time, in real life, in the real world. I think, yeah, potentially at different times of our evolution, different ways of being spiritual were more important, or more relevant. And I've heard that many times, that we are in this time where actually being the householder is the biggest spiritual test, really, right now. So if you're really embarking on the spiritual path, you stay in the household. It was interesting when I graduated from my teacher training all those years ago. My teachers were quite, they were quite experienced yogis to old women. They were kind of like our grandmas. They were really old, and see them in the street and you think they were just like two frail old grandmothers, but then they'd get up on the podium, get up into a headstand and do all this stuff, and they were really amazing. But Di, she does all these past life regression kind of stuff as well. She could tap into your past life stuff, and she said to me, she said, Michele, you are a monk in the marketplace, and you've been a monk many times in the mountains and in the caves and whatnot, but now your task is to be in the marketplace. And I sometimes get those feelings of like, oh, I wish I could just get away from the world and just go up to the mountaintop or sit in an ashram. I really do. Sometimes there's that kind of calling of just like stepping away from the world. But yeah, somehow I'm not.
We definitely need monks in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I find almost like perhaps, I'm not sure, but like your spiritual path can be accelerated through being in the marketplace.
I think so
like
too.
through being able to observe and witness your interactions, and you're kind of given a greater ground to work from.
Yeah, I mean all the incredible lessons and what you can learn in interactions with other people, with relationships. You could easily just let go of all that and just be on your own.
That's right.
But so much learning, so much overcoming a lot of your vasanas or whatnot by having those interactions, I think is really important. Anyway, moving on, because otherwise we'll never get past this. Gemma, do you want to come maybe a little bit closer so you get in the screen so the others can see you as well? Sure. So yamas and niyamas, the ethics and guidelines to the way in which we live. So we'll go a little deep into that, but then your homework is to explore at a deeper level too. So asana and then pranayama. So asana is our third limb, pranayama is the fourth limb. It says here, control of energy through restraint of breath. So again, we know a little bit of pranayama, we've done a bit of work with that, we understand some of the aspects of pranayama. And then after pranayama there is pratyahara, and pratyahara is the fifth limb, which literally means withdrawal of the senses. So pranayama and pratyahara help the sadhaka, and the sadhaka is, we are the sadhakas, those doing the work, to explore his hidden facets and enable him to penetrate the core of his being. Then there is dharana. Dharana is concentration. Dhyana is meditation. And samadhi is total absorption. And they are the fulfillment of the yogic discipline, the essence of natural constituents of yoga. They develop when the other 5 disciplines had been mastered. So actually all 8 intermingle and interweave to form the whole seamless body of yoga. So, it's a sequence to some degree, but it's also not in another degree, in the sense that, it's good to follow this sequentially, understand it sequentially, but obviously we're still practicing meditation too. It's not like we've got to wait until we master everything else until we can finally sit down and practice. Now we're doing it all at once. We're doing asana, we're breathing, we're doing pranayama within the asana. There's ethical guidelines considered within the asana as well, and all of that. It's all interwoven, but there is also, they do follow on from each other sequentially as well to some degree. So particularly in the sense that those first 5, that's the practice, that's the sadhana, that's what we sit down and practice. Or sit down, mostly sitting down, but also just being in the world. But then the last 3 is the result. So they're not. You don't practice So in actual fact, you don't practice meditation. That's a misnomer. We always say, I'm going to practice my meditation. And, we do to some degree. But meditation is really a result of sitting and practicing pratyahara or pranayama. So pranayama and pratyahara are the tools to come into meditation. So meditation is, meditation is when the mind actually, this deeper level of yoga that we can look at meditation in many ways, and that's the thing, it's become a mindfulness practice, and we'll look at that next week. Actually, that's our lecture next week. We're going to do meditation next week, and it's a practice. There's many different ways in which you can practice meditation, but from the perspective of Patanjali, meditation is the result of withdrawing from the senses, going inwards, finding a point of focus, a concentration, and generally on the breath. And meditation is when the subject and object separation dissolves. So, we become one with our subject. So it's using the mind to somewhat dissolve it. It's a tricky thing in a way. We're focusing on the breath, and we're being so absorbed in the breath that everything else disappears. And when that happens, that's meditation. As soon as the thought arises, I wonder if you're out of your meditation. And it's only when there's no thought, no mind, that's meditation from the yogic perspective. Now, when we go out in the world to teach the general people how to meditate, we don't always approach it that way, because that's a very advanced state of being. But we have to think that that's kind of the goal, ultimately. And then from that place of absorption, samadhi is just a result of that. Samadhi is the bliss that comes from that absorption into the non-dual state. So non-dual in that sense, because the duality is the subject and object of the mind, focusing on something. When the mind and the something merge and there is no separation, then we're in the non-dual state. There's no duality anymore, there's no separation. And then that becomes blissful. That turns just like the result is bliss. So So those are our eight limbs. So let's have a look. First of all, the yamas. So there are 5 yamas. So there's both 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. And it's interesting, isn't it, that there are 5 yamas, 5 niyamas, which makes 10, which is the same as the 10 commandments within the Christian religion. And I can't remember the 10 commandments now, but I reckon if we broke them down, it probably wouldn't be that dissimilar to the yamas and niyamas. Could be an interesting project. So the 5 yamas from this yogic perspective, Patanjali's, are himsa, which means non-violence or non-injury, satya, which means truthfulness, asteya, which means non-stealing, brahmacharya, which means continence, and aparigraha, which is freedom from avarice or non-covetousness.
Those continents.
So continence, brahmacharya is sexual continence. So withholding the sexual energy. So again, we need to bring ourselves into this idea of, well, am I stepping away from the world into the ashram, and from that point, that sexual abstaining or that withholding of the sexual energy would mean that you don't engage sexually. You just let that go completely. But because we're monks in the marketplace and we still have relationships, then, that could make those relationships pretty difficult if we decided, no, just never going to have sex anymore,
That would be really bad for relationships.
Yeah.
That's our hormones big time.
So I know, again, going back to the Vipassana, for a long time they thought that certain people following certain rules were the only ones who could access those higher realms. And it was Uberkin who came through as a householder who reached such heights on the path that they have kind of had to reevaluate what was possible. And so again, it's like, I understand there's lots of advice surrounding how to create a framework to work within to develop on the spiritual path. But it also seems like not to put limitations on ourselves, because we are in relationships and not acting as celibate monks. Then, yeah, it doesn't mean that we just, throw the towel in and say, like, I can't really advance in this lifetime. So, yeah, it's an interesting one.
Absolutely.
And in the tantra, instead of I guess you could meet it halfway, so that you're not ejaculating all the time, but you're learning with the breath techniques to pull the energy up, so it becomes like a bit more sacred.
Absolutely, yeah. So this ultimately, the way in which you approach that will be an individual thing. Whichever sort of different, let's say, methods or traditions within traditions might suggest a good, a useful tools or approaches to honing that sexual energy. But the idea is, overall it's about understanding that sexual energy and somehow becoming a master of it, rather than sexual energy becoming a master of you. So that often, and we live in a very sexualized society where, sex is blatantly misused and people are, sex crazy and there's this real imbalance. So, it's learning to really, withhold that energy and control it within you in whichever way that's going to call you. And one idea is for men to control their ejaculation, whether it's all the time or sometimes or whatever ratio works or feels right. But it might even just be a case of, well, I make sure my sexual interactions are just with my one partner, rather than people who might be drawn to having multiple partners, or even just your sexual thoughts. That in itself is a part of that sexual energy. So how do we control those sexual thoughts that might sort of wander off into that sexual energy taking over us, rather than us being in control of it? So there's many ways in which we can look into that. traditionally it was the abstinence completely, and that's, you know, we know that from traditional monks or nuns in convents or monasteries, is, you know, that there's no sexuality at all. But, you know, that in itself can cause issues. It becomes that energy becomes then repressed.
Guilt, shame.
Yeah. So, you know, it's really just understanding that sexual energy and being empowered in ways in which we can work mindfully with it. For, you know, and that's the beauty, I guess, of the modern day that we live in, that there are all these opportunities, traditions and tools and ways of doing things that we have the possibility to explore all of that, whereas in the past it would be like, this is the way and this is the way we do it. You want to be on the spiritual path, you don't do sex, or, you know, or within my tradition, maybe there was another sect that was like, well, actually we do, but this is the way we do it. But yeah, so yeah, maybe one of you to choose as your topic, I reckon. I recommend one of you choose this one at least, because it's a good one to explore. So yeah, intending no harm in word, thought or deed, being sincere, honest and faithful, being careful not to misappropriate another's wealth, being chaste and not coveting the possessions of others or accepting gifts are the practices of yama. It's essential they be observed and followed. They are to be practiced individually and collectively, irrespective of lineage, place, time, condition and career. The yamas are mighty universal vows, says Patanjali. So just going over them again. Ahimsa, non-violence, no harm in word, thought or deed. So that's obvious, isn't it, really? Satya is truthfulness, so being sincere, honest and faithful. Asteya is non-stealing, so being careful not to misappropriate another's wealth.
What's with that? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, that could be, you know, for example, you know, non-stealing. You know, the obvious one is, you know, you don't literally go in and steal someone's money from their wallet or whatever. But it's even, you know, misappropriating someone's wealth, you know, like giving bad financial advice, or, you know, just bad advice to someone in general that's going to hinder their wealth. But it doesn't even have to be monetary wealth, you know, like even, I guess, you know, offering you a Coca-Cola, saying this is really good for you, you know, like that's going to be bad for her physical wealth, you know, like, so, you know, being mindful about the way in which you respect other people's wealth, and not just, you know, wealth in all the things that we own, so in our bodies and our possessions, of course, but also the mind, you know. So it's even, in a way, you know, not brainwashing people, you could say, you know, to some degree, in a negative way. And then there's brahmacharya, which we've talked about already, continence, and then not aparigraha, not coveting the possessions of others or accepting gifts.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that one as well. So, if, you know, with the 5 love languages, how presence is one of them. So, if you're like walking strongly on the path, all of a sudden, like, you got to take gifts out of the equation.
Gifts synonymous with like bribes.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
It's a little more like that, and it's a little more like, I guess, expectations as well.
Yep.
You know, having, oh, you know, like I've got an expectation that you know everyone gives me a gift for Christmas because you know I'm a good guy, and you know, of course, that's a tricky one because you get to Christmas and you go to your family, and it's like if you don't get a gift from and if that's the tradition in your family, then you'd be a bit upset, wouldn't you? So letting go of that would be you know an interesting one to work with. But you know, definitely like things like bribes. I was actually listening to the radio today, and they were talking about how politicians are allowed to have donations, and they're allowed to have donations up until $14,500 worth of donations, where they don't have to disclose that, which you know it's pretty crazy that they can have that much amount of donation. So, which is literally a bribe. So we're talking about this one politician who received these donations which were staggered, so they actually amounted up to $100,000, but because they were less than $14,500 each time that was given, you know, in increments, she didn't have to disclose it. But it was a mining company giving her $100,000 worth of donations. So you know, this is the kind of stuff that happens in our political environment. So yeah, as a yogi, we wouldn't accept those bribes. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, you know, I mean, we could then look at that whole big ball game of like traditionally in India, the yogi wouldn't ever charge for his teachings. It's just not in the culture, and that would come down to that as well. But then here in the West, it's different because in the East, the yogi would not need to charge for his teachings because his students would feed him. They'd build an ashram around him, you know, and he would never. The master would never have to worry about the finances or the money or anything, and that's absolutely fine in that culture. Even you know, living in Thailand, Thai monks they also don't take money. Actually, they do a little bit. They you know again donations, people donate, but they don't you know literally get paid or anything. And they're the way they eat is they go around with a bowl in the morning, and they just go around with their bowl, and people just put food into their bowl, and whatever they get, that's their meal for the day. And that's just the way. So that's the spiritual path in the East.
The ashrams, they still funding as well.
Yeah, but traditionally the guru is not the one controlling the funding.
Yeah, they're just doing their thing.
And that's, yeah, it's just that's his thing. But yeah, but of course here, if I just said, okay, I'm not going to charge for my yoga classes or my teaching, how am I going to pay my rent and you know, pay my bills? And so, you know, we're in a different society, so we need to obviously tweak that to the way our society works. We don't have the same value of spiritual teachers here that the East does. The East, you know, once you've donned the robe and you've on the spiritual path, then the whole of society lifts you up and holds you, embraces you upon that journey. Whereas here, you get looked like you've gone mad or something.
But also Rubens has a quote like you should never deny a gift. What's that from?
Oh, in Tibetan, the most disrespectful and dishonorable thing you can ever do is refuse a gift. But then again, going back to Uberkin, he had like had this rule that you can't give me anything. And if anybody put a donation in, like even like a basket of goodies, he would call them out and publicly shame them because they went against his rules. So as you said, tweaking it to the tradition in society at that time, I think is important.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think what it comes down to is we're aiming to let go of any expectations or attachment.
Yeah.
Attachment and attachment. That's I guess what I would say as far as that goes is the biggest important value of whether we're receiving gifts or charging for a course or whatever it is. Yeah, letting go of those expectations or attachments to that. But yeah, a tricky one, definitely a tricky one to navigate. Not all just straight. I mean, some of them are straight up, like ahimsa, it's pretty straight up. Although even ahimsa, it doesn't necessarily mean being non-violent to others, but it also could mean being non-violent to yourself. So you can look at it, because most of the yamas are really, let's say, are the way in which we interact with the world around us, generally speaking, whereas the niyamas are the way in which we interact with ourselves. So generally speaking, that's the yamas are the outward interactions and the niyamas are the inner interactions. But, you can always have them both ways as well, depending. So, effects of yama. If the sadhaka adheres to the principles, let's say, of ahimsa, all beings around him abandon their hostile behavior. By observance of satcha, spoken words fructify into action. All kinds of treasures are bestowed on him who observes asteya. For a brahmachari, a chaste or celibate person, vigour, vitality, energy and spiritual knowledge flow like a river. One who observes a parigraha will come to know of his past and future lives. So niyama. The 5 niyamas are to be followed not merely as individual but also as spiritual disciplines. They are sausha, cleanliness or purity, santosha, contentment, tapas, religious fervour, svajaya, study of the sacred scriptures and of one's own self, and ishvara pranidhana, the surrender of the self to God. Wow, good ones, eh?
Yeah.
So sausha is of 2 types, external and internal. One's daily bath is external. Asanas and pranayamas cleanses one internally. They help to cleanse one's thoughts, words and actions and make the body fit for its Lord to dwell in. So cleaning and purifying ourselves, sausha is. And on a physical level, we keep our body clean and pure, but also internally, and it's, internally even what we put into our body, so our diet and whatnot. But then also, using things like pranayama and asana to also ultimately all those other steps sort of snowball on, coming into that clear mind, so cleansing our thoughts as well. Santosha brings about the state of cheerfulness and benevolence. So santosha is contentment. So it's a big one on the Buddhist path. It's one of the main qualities there. And it's it's a huge one actually. I find it really, really important one, and one that that I personally find developing more and more over the years on the spiritual journey. You just, you learn to not sway so much. It's that middle path that the Buddhists talk about. Not swaying too much on looking for the great stuff, and not swaying too much on trying to push away the bad stuff. It's just being okay with where you're at in each moment. When you have that greater overview, knowing that we live in this world of duality where things do sway all the time, and it's just the natural way things go, is just to be okay with that sway, not getting caught up, content with whatever's happening in the world. Even in the times of the pandemic and we lock down and all the rest, people can get really caught up and really in despair with all of that. And just come back to that middle ground, just realizing this is just, we're at that side of the pendulum now. So we're just going to be okay with it.
I feel like as well it's that fine line of like honouring your emotions of how you feel about something.
Yeah.
And being like, I'm sad about this, or I'm angry, feeling that, letting it out, but then bringing back the contentment. I feel like people just carry that non-contentment with them, and that's where they're suffering.
Yeah, it's just not pushing away so that you're always in this middle ground.
Yeah.
It's experiencing whichever side of the pendulum you're on.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, and being okay with where you're at in that moment. If you're in a moment of happiness and joy, it's easy to be okay with that. If you're in a moment of sadness and despair, it's a little harder to be okay with that. But just to
equanimity.
Yeah.
Equanimous. Yeah, it's a nice word.
Yeah, regardless of like being success or failure, but also the pendulum idea is close to having that equanimity. Yeah.
They say equanimity, and this isn't me saying it, this is from what I've heard, in the deeper parts of the passion, it's the only vibration in the universe that nothing can align itself with.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but it's a clear vibration.
And then there is tapas, and tapas is at the top. It's religious fervor. So tapas is a burning effort involving purification, self-discipline, and austere practice. So it's a religiousness or devoutness in the practice of yoga. Tapas purges and purifies the body, senses, and mind. So tapas is, it's essentially, it's the effort in the practice. Tapas is coming to your mat and doing your practice every day. That's tapas. Doing what you know is good for you on this path.
Even when you don't want to.
Even when you don't want to.
Yeah, no. People think sometimes when you practice yoga, they're like, you just love doing it all the time and love the poses, but it's probably 10% of the time that I want to get on my mat. A lot of times it's like, I know I need to do it because I know I need it.
You know it's good for you.
Yeah.
And then Svajaya enlightens the practitioner with the knowledge of his inner immortal being. So Svajaya is essentially, you could say is when we looked at, remember the very beginning of the course, we looked at the streams of yoga, and we talked about Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga was the yoga of knowledge. So it's the idea of actually studying the scriptures, studying the sacred books. And that's in a way, that's that's using the intellect and informing the intellect, but it's also there's an outward aspect to that, I guess. There's the interaction between the word and our minds, but then it's also that internal work of self-inquiry, understanding the nature of who we are, looking into how our minds work, looking into that first part of this Yoga Sutras, of understanding the qualities of mind and the ego and all of that. That's all part of this. That's all part of Svadhyaya. So enlightens the practitioner with the knowledge, ultimately, of his inner immortal being. So, we need to also recognize and understand the mortal being, the mortal aspect of who we are, but then ultimately the deeper knowledge is the understanding and the connection of the inner immortal being, our soul, our spirit, our Atman. And then there's Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana brings the inner being to his creator, the Supreme God. So, really, the best word to describe this is surrender. Surrender to a higher force, let's say. That's Ishvara Pranidhana. It's Ishvara Pranidhana is, if we go back into those streams of yoga, is Bhakti Yoga. It's the yoga of devotion. So, being in awe and magnificence of the magnificence of the world in which we live in, but more so in magnificence of what is it that brings this world into being. So that's this idea of God, of universal consciousness, of whatever you want to call the source of life. So that's a pretty beautiful niyama, isn't it?
Really good. Can I share a quick story just after you're ready?
Yeah, just one sec, and then I don't know if it says it here, but basically those last three niyamas become what is then known as Kriya Yoga. So Kriya Yoga is the combination of those three.
The last three niyamas.
So the tapas, the effort, the svadhyaya, the self-study, and Ishvara Pranidhana, the surrender. So often, when we talk about doing a kriya is like an exercise, often seen as a kind of a spiritual exercise. So even some of our pranayamas are kriyas, you could say. So there's an effort required for that exercise. We need to do some kind of, whether it's movement, whether it's breath work, whatever it might be. Then there is an inquiry into what's happening, through that exercise. How's it affecting our body, our mind? How's it connecting to our deep inner self? And then ultimately there's a needing to surrender to that greater purpose, that greater presence within that kriya. Something like that. Yes, Ruben, what was your story?
Sam wanted to say something as well. So it just reminded me, there's this book, it's like my most favorite book. It's called The Moon Appears When the Water is Still, and it's all these little poems about enlightenment. And there's this teacher and his student experiences samadhi and he goes off and he writes all about it. And back then you didn't have a massive warehouse to be processing all these books. So you just had to write out the same book again and again to get it out there. And he comes to his master so proud with all his books, and he's like, look, master, I wrote a book about samadhi. And he's like, oh, good, you go get them all and bring them here. And he goes, gets all of them, brings them there. He's like, all right, now put it out into the field. And he's so excited, thinking his master's going to do something for him to bless the books. And he puts it out into the field and he's like, all right, now go get the gasoline and pour it all over the books. And he starts scratching his head. It's like, why? It has to do what his master says. And he's like, all right, now light it on fire. And he said, don't you ever discount or take away somebody's ability to do their tapas, and do the effort and show up every day to do their work. It's like these books aren't gonna help them achieve their final goal.
What a sad story.
Indeed.
I was gonna say that, like, to me it feels like, you know, the effort is the following the breath, and in that there's a deepening sense of something more than just me as the mortal form. And then over time, like, what I'm working on is to be able to drop into that space more and more through the day, so that then I'm able to be in flow and alignment and then surrender to the unknown. But it kind of does happen from the breath. But then that breath practice needs to be more than just once a day, because it's not enough to drop it deep if it's just once a day. Like a continual, whenever you remember, it's like following the breath again. Which is hard in the society we live in, but takes more conscious effort, like when interacting with people, like, what's my breath doing? Like, am I in my body breathing? Like,
that's beautiful. Thank you, Sam. So true. What we'll do is we'll just we'll go and just, I mean, as you can see, this is really a lecture that could go on for the whole training, really. And I'll just sort of touch on the ums and the yums. So as I said, I'd like you guys to choose one, or if you feel like you want to choose a couple of them, you can do that as well.
A couple of the yums and yums.
But let's fast forward and actually read a couple of the actual sutras. So we might go to have a look at the asana. So if we go to page 157, and page 157 is, at the bottom there is, so the sutras are numbered, the first number is the pada, and the second number is the sutra within the pada. So this is the second pada, which is our sadhana pada. So remember, the sadhana is the practice, and which really encompasses those first five limbs. And this sutra here is 246, is Sthira Sukham Asana. So this is kind of like the sutra that you all need to remember. If we're going to remember a sutra, this is the one.
Sorry, are we on page 157?
7. Yeah,
Okay,
down at the bottom. Yeah. Sthira Sukham Asana. Not necessarily. Well, there's probably a couple. You know, the second one. Does anyone remember what the second Yoga Sutra is? Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha.
Yoga is the cessation of the mind.
Yoga is the cessation of the mind. Yeah? Which we're starting to get a little bit more of an idea of why they say that now. Yeah? Now that we're getting into these things. So that's another one that's probably that's the most important one you should remember, because that's the ultimate goal of Sangha Yoga. But this one is an important one in the sense that this is what we are going to be teaching a lot out in the world. We are going to be teaching the asana aspect of yoga. And so this one is specifically related to the asana. Sthira Sukham Asana. So what does that mean? If we break it down, there's sthira, which means firm, fixed, steady, steadfast or lasting. Sukham is happiness or delight. And asanam is postures or poses. So asana is perfect firmness of the body, steadiness of intelligence, and benevolence of spirit. Wow. So the definition of asana is given as follows. Whatever asana is performed, it should be done with a feeling of firmness, steadiness and endurance in the body, goodwill in the intelligence of the head, and awareness and delight in the intelligence of the heart. This is how each asana should be understood, practiced and experienced. Performance of the asana should be nourishing and illuminative. Some have taken this sutra to mean that any comfortable posture is suitable. If that were so, these would be asanas of pleasure, bhogasanas, not yogasanas. This sutra defines the perfected asana. From the very first sutra, Patanjali demands the highest quality of attention to perfection. This discipline and attention must be applied to the practice of each asana, to penetrate to its very depths in the remotest parts of the body. So even the meditational asana has to be cultivated by the fibers, cells, joints and muscles in cooperation with the mind. If asanas are not performed in this way, they become stale and the performer becomes diseased, a rogi, rather than a yogi. Now, nor does asana refer exclusively to the sitting poses used for meditation. Some divide asana into those which cultivate the body and those which are used in meditation. But in any asana, the body has to be toned and the mind tuned so that one can stay longer with a firm body and a serene mind. Asanas should be performed without creating aggressiveness in the muscle spindles or the skin cells. Space must be created between muscle and skin so that the skin receives the actions of the muscles, joints and ligaments. The skin then sends messages to the brain, mind and intelligence which judge the appropriateness of these actions. In this way, the principles of yama and niyama are involved and action and reflection harmonize. In addition, the practice of a variety of asanas clears the nervous system, causes the energy to flow in the system without obstruction, and ensures an even distribution of that energy during pranayama. So usually the mind is closer to the body and to the organs of action and perception than to the soul. As asanas are refined, they automatically become meditative. as the intelligence is made to penetrate towards the core of being. Each asana has 5 functions to perform. They are cognitive, mental, intellectual, and spiritual. Cognitive action is the exertion of the organs of action. Cognitive action is the perception of the results of that action. When the two are fused together, the discriminative faculty of the mind acts to guide the organs of action and perception to perform the asanas more correctly. The rhythmic flow of energy and awareness is experienced evenly and without interruption, both centripetally and centrifugally, throughout the channels of the body. A pure state of joy is felt in the cells and the mind. The body, mind, and soul are one. This is the manifestation of dharana and dhyana, the practice of an asana. So remember, dharana is that six limb. Dharana is that concentration, and dhyana is the absorption, is the meditation. 7th limb. Patanjali's explanation of dharana and dhyana in Sutras 3.1.2 1-2 beautifully describes the correct performance of an asana. He says, the focusing of attention on the chosen point or area within the body, as well as outside, is concentration. Maintaining this intensity of awareness leads from one-pointed attention to non-specific attentiveness. When the attentive awareness becomes the consciousness of the practitioner and his practice is unbroken, this is dhyana. When Patanjali says that the pairs of opposites do not exist in the correct performance of an asana, he clearly implies the involvement of dharana and dhyana. So there's quite a lot in there to unpack.
So just to clarify, was dharana effort and dhyana is meditation or absorption?
It's to some degree, not the effort in the sense of what tapas was,
Yeah.
but there is a relationship. It's the one point of focus, really, which require concentration,
Yeah.
which requires effort. Yes,
Yeah, sure.
it requires effort.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the 8 within the 8 limbs so these have to be, they both have to be involved in the practice of asana as well.
Yeah, well, this is how this idea of it's all integrated. Really, we can break them up individually, see them as individual aspects, but ultimately, we're integrating it all in most ways. So within the asana itself, when it says stiram sukham, we need to be firm, fixed, steady, and steadfast in the body. But we also need to have this kind of lightness and delight of our intelligence, of our benevolence of spirit. So sometimes it's literally translated as firmness and lightness within a pose. And that's kind of like a simplification, you could say. There's within each pose there's a sense of firmness, but there's also a sense of lightness. And you could say that both from the point of view of the body, but also of the mind. Whereas maybe he would say a little more that the firmness is in the body and the lightness is in the mind. But I reckon we can then bring both of those qualities into both of those aspects of the art as well. because, you know, when he's talking about, you know, asana should be performed without creating aggressiveness in the muscle spindles or the skin cells. Space must be created between the muscle and skin so that the skin receives the actions of the muscles, joints and ligaments, and then the skin sends his message to the brain. What he's saying there is that, you know, if you are completely locked in a sense of firmness, if the firmness is a rigid firmness, then that space between the muscles and the skin is not going to be there. So there needs to be this underlying steadiness and groundedness of the asana, but there also needs to be some space in the body as well, some lightness, because we want the energy to move, to flow, the energy and the information to reach the mind, so that the mind is also within that lighter state. And then, you know, and then the mind is involved in connecting to the body, and there's our dharma. You know, it's focusing on feeling that in my hip. Where exactly am I feeling? Right in there, right there. Yeah, that's the point. That's the spot. Pranayama is there, so breathing, and you know, and just tweaking that firmness and lightness, that ultimately you can breathe into the resistance and just really keep the mind focused on that resistance, which then suddenly the resistance disappears. And we can completely come into dhyana, into a state of dhyana, where we absorb into.
It's like when it's indicated like when you feel pain, it's the same sort of idea. Like you can bring awareness to the pain and then breathe through it, and then it somehow is meant to dissipate.
Yeah, to some degree.
Like that or not?
To some degree.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say the aggressiveness point. It's also like when you're in a pose, you know, the mind's aggression is like, you know, I'm not doing it as well as I did it last time. Like, you know, there could be like a judgment, or oh my God, look at that person next to me, they're doing it so much better. Or look at that person, they've fallen. Like there's a comparison, and that's like an aggressive quality of the mind, where it's not a judgment comparison or like jealousy, or you know, all of these like darker emotions come in. So it's like, how can you keep your mind a bit lighter to let go of the judgments in each moment? Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. And these little realizations that you're having, or little insights, I mean, these are little gems that this is how we can bring in the Yoga Sutras, the 8 limbs, into our classes. And, you know, just exactly what you just said there, Sam, you know, spill that out in a class while you're in a pose. And, you know, just say, you know, this is the essence of Stiram Sukham, which is Stiram Sukham Asana, to find this you know, firmness and lightness within a pose, within the asana. You know, this is where we start to really appreciate the teachings and how do we incorporate them into our classes. So it could be with your little presentation that you guys will do, you know, you could think about that as well. You know, how can we bring some of this knowledge, some of this understanding into the way in which we teach on the mat. I'm not saying you have to, but it would be a good exercise, definitely.
Are we going to choose our own?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just before we finish, because So, as you can see, there's a lot more sutras, there's a lot more information, there's a lot more to try and understand about this. But I'll give you another little link to another guy who I find he's pretty good at describing this stuff. It's a little half an hour kind of YouTube video, and you know, if you can, just put it on whenever you're doing something at home or whatever, having breakfast, making your dinner, chuck it on and have a listen to this guy, Jason, something or other. He's pretty good. Because, you know, we're just touching the surface, really. I've given you the overview of what they are, but it would be useful if you can take, you know, your exercise is obviously to take a bit more time to explore at least one of them, but maybe even have a greater, I mean, ideally, you've got this, you know, you read it. You take some time reading it. But, yeah, it's not like you have to read it and understand it all now, you know. It's like one of those books that you'll always have, you always keep, and whenever you're inspired to understand a little bit more about one of the particular limbs, then go and explore. It doesn't have to be now, it doesn't have to be next year, it doesn't have to be in 10 years, whenever it is. But know that this is essentially the foundation, this is the roadmap of our teachings. So to have, you know, the greater understanding we can have, the better we can teach. I just wanted to have a quick look at Pratyahara, because that one we haven't really explored a lot. Because there's quite a lot of pranayama, and of course pranayama is a wonderful subject to immerse in, but also we have done a little bit on that already. So we probably won't read all of this, but if we go to page 168, that's where we start on Pratyahara. Svadishaya. And so remember these sutras up the top there, you've got the Sanskrit actually. You know, in theory it actually helps somehow to at least scan the written Sanskrit script, even though we can't read it to understand it, but just it's like a transmission. So having a look at it, and then the sutras themselves are essentially they're all little chants. Essentially, that's what they are. It's all Sanskrit chants.
Is there like a song or a mantra that like recites all of the sutras?
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. It's just one ongoing mantra song. The Yoga Sutras they're chants. So the idea is that, you know, you sit and you chant. Svavishaya samprayoge chitasya svarupanukra iva indriyanam pratyahara. Another one next verse in Sanskrit, so I'm sure I got that wrong, but you know, that's the genuine sort of way in which traditionally they're recited. So what does this mean? Well, let's just skip those first ones. Let's go straight to the italics, where it says, withdrawing the senses, mind and consciousness from contact with external objects, and then drawing them inwards towards the seer is Pratyahara. So whilst, of course, you know, in daily living, in experiencing the world, in the, you know, the tantric way of connecting to nature and everything else is definitely something we should be doing and practicing. But this is the practice of going inwards, absorbing into ourselves, into the inner self. So So in this sense, in this particular practice, pratyahara is the withdrawal of the outer interactions, the outer connections. So withdrawing the senses. So it's, essentially, generally speaking, you would say you close your eyes for pratyahara. You close your eyes and you internalize. You go inwards. We want to go inwards towards the seer. The seer is the inner self. The seer is the witness. The seer is the eternal part of who we are. And so pratyahara is that journey into ourselves. So pratyahara, almost like it's the end of the sadhana. The first part of the sadhana is to get all our ethics and guidelines right, and make sure the body's clean and we've done all the right things, thinking all the right things and doing the right practice, working our pranayama, and then it's like, okay, now let's go in, let's go deep, let's deep dive into ourselves. So that's pratyahara, is that final part of that sadhana, which then evolves into the last three, the samayana, dharana, dhyana. So dharana is in a sense there's an effort there still, to some degree, but some dhyana and samadhi, obviously no effort there. They are the results. So now the mind is able to concentrate, and the senses no longer importune the mind for their gratification. They lose interest in the tastes and flavours of the respective objects and are drawn back from the external world in order to help the mind in its inner quest. This is pratyahara. This is the foundation of the path of renunciation. As a bird cannot fly if one of its wings is cut off, so it is in the case of the sadhaka. The two wings of yoga are practice, from yama to pranayama, and renunciation from pratyahara to samadhi. For flight, both are necessary. Then the yogi dwells in his soul, perceiving all things directly, without the intervention of citta, the conscious faculty. So yeah, on the path of renunciation, I guess the renunciate who externally renunciates the world, so he goes into the cave or into the ashram, that action there in a way is pratyahara. But we can be an inner renunciant, and that's where we are yogis in the marketplace, where we're still living our life, having our relationships, going to work, doing all the things that we do. However, we're finding some time to sit and practice our meditation. Although really what we're practicing is this, pratyahara. This is the inner renunciation, so renunciating the world for the time that we're sitting, because we're aiming to, connect to ourselves, to the inner self. So, even though we can have moments of that in the outer connections, those little mini samadhis when we see the bird out in nature, and that's a wonderful thing. And not to say that that's your path and you're more on that tantric aspect of awakening through outer connection, but this is the path of this type of yoga, the yoga outlined by Patanjali, which is essentially, this is called Sankhya or Sankhya philosophy. So this is the path of using these practices to go inwards. And so this becomes a really important part of that practice, pratyahara. So in normal daily life, consciousness helps the senses see the objects of the world with thoughts of acquisition, rejection, and resignation. They become hypnotized by them and are drawn outwards towards pleasure. In Pratyahara, the senses are directed inwards towards the realization of the soul. Pratyahara is the withdrawal of the mind from its contact with the senses of perception and organs of action. Then its direction is towards the soul. The relationship between the mind and the senses is aptly compared to that of bees following the queen bee. If the queen bee moves, the others follow. When she rests, the others rest. They do not function independently of their queen. Similarly, when the mind stops, the senses too stop functioning. This is Pratyahara. It's the beginning of man's return journey towards his maker. It is the science of restraining the senses by depriving them of that which feeds them, the external objective world. It frees them by withdrawing the supply of nourishment in the form of desires and their satisfactions. So, as you can see, there's a whole lot more to that. Feel free to keep reading in your own time, but we have come to the end of our time together today. But before we do, just let's choose those yamas and niyamas. So is anyone, with what we've explored today, is anything calling out for anyone in particular?
I would like the last one, the surrender.
Ishvara Pranidhana? Yes, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
What's the one before that?
Svajaya, self-study.
Huh?
Self-study.
Oh, like self-inquiry, or is that the knowledge one?
It's both, yeah.
Oh no, you do that one.
I'll do that. Is the tapas before that?
Yeah.
You said you could do a couple, yeah?
Yep.
Does anybody want to take the tapas?
Do you want to take the tapas?
Do you want to take the two?
I'll take the two.
Great.
I wouldn't mind the salsa, the cleanliness.
Salsa.
Sounds like we're requesting food from the waitress.
What would you like on the menu? Huh? Purity for you? That'll be $23. Good. Salsa.
Salsa.
I can do the continence one.
Great. Brahmacharya.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And what's another one? I've forgotten them
If you
all
covered both the masculine, feminine, that'd be
with continence. Oh no, but I'll do another one.
Okay.
The other one, Sam, there's ahimsa, satya, which is truthfulness, asteya, non-stealing, and aparigraha.
Gemma, have you got
I'll do truthfulness.
Sam's all over truthfulness. They say honesty without compassion is cruelty. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because in life, it's so important to be truthful. However, being discerning of when. So, for example, we looked out at a property yesterday. The lady came up from the Gold Coast, 4.5 hours stuck in traffic. Samantha had one look at it and she knew that it wasn't for her. So she comes downstairs and the lady's like, how'd you go? And Sam's just like, I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to be truthful. And she gave it to us straight.
No, but then I said, like, the positives is the location, but yeah, like, the photos were not like truthful. The place. Yeah.
Right, all right, so you're doing Satya and Brahmacharya.
Yeah.
I'm going to do ahimsa, non-violence.
Ahimsa?
Yeah.
Great. Good one.
Is there any left over? Because I don't know if do another one. Do half an hour.
Well, no one's done a parigraha or asteya from the yamas, and then from the niyamas,
Could I do
santosha is still missing. Okay.
Do you want to do
So you're doing santosha.
Yeah. Hold on still.
Now, don't forget we've got to leave something also for
Oh, I know shit.
Anwesha. So, what I might actually say is why don't you, 1, 2, 3, 4, so there's 5 of you. Let's just divide these up between the 5 of you. Yep.
Yep.
Anwesha can do pratyahara.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'll get her to choose. She can do either pratyahara or the last 3 if she wants to try it. So that means Gemma, can you take one more? So basically, what we need to still is a parigraha, a steya. Oh, but there should be 5. Hold on a second.
Just a stare and a parigraha.
What about a himsa?
Ahimsa Gemma has.
Gemma's got himsa.
okay.
We might need someone to write it down. If you write it down.
Yeah.
Write all the yamas down first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, they're the 5 yamas. And then the niyamas, the 5 niyamas are sausha, santosha, tapas, svajaya, and ishvara pranidhana. So then we go to ahimsa and put Gemma's name next to ahimsa. Satya is Sam.
I was gonna say I could do pratyahara, otherwise if Anwesha wants to do my 2.
Well, maybe you have a chat to her personally and ask her, yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
But for the moment, let's just resist and give her the opportunity to.
Yeah.
So Ashteya, non-stealing. Who's doing that?
I can do that one also.
Yeah? Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Gemma is Asteya. Brahmacharya is Sam. Parigraha. I guess is you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Sausha is also you. Yeah? And Santosha would be you. What were you going to do?
I was doing, Santosha is the
Santosha.
contentment.
Yeah. Santosha.
Yeah.
Tapas is Reuben, and Svajaya is Reuben, and Ishvara Pranidhana is Lydia.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Look forward to your presentations. And then just maybe in the chat, let's just check into who's going to do this. So not next week. Next week our lecture is meditation lecture, and that's going to be zoomed. So no coming in next week, and we'll try and do. Since we're zooming, if we could, if you don't mind, we'll do like 12 to 4, or maybe even a bit less, 12 to 3:30, something like that, and we'll just go straight through. Maybe a little break, but rather than have a long break, so we'll just dedicate a chunk of time to the lecture. So zoomed that 12 to 3:30. The following weekend, again, I'm away, so we'll Zoom again and probably do something similar to that. But that's when you guys are going to present your...
The long weekend, Charles.
No, the weekend before that, the weekend of the 3rd, 4th.
So we're presenting on Zoom.
Presenting on Zoom.
Yeah.
So you guys present on Zoom. Those who can, so that'll be, you can,
Yeah.
you can't,
Oh, yeah.
you can, and you guys can, yeah? So, yeah, 4 of you presenting then, and I know you can't, and then Anwesha can't, so you and Anwesha will present the week after back in the studio. Unless you just like to do something.
Could I do it online from SO2? If I found like a quiet space.
Absolutely.
I still have to decide what I'll do, but
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if for whatever reason you can't present, then we'll find another time.
yeah.
Are you
Sure.
going?
Yeah, I'll have tickets, but I'm on the Vipassana, so I'm not sure if I should go straight after.
What's Vipassana?
The 10-day meditation.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You'd be really calm for esoteric. You'd just be so centered. Just
Yeah. I'm gonna be overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yeah, Lydia, all the best for the Vipassana course, but I'll check in with you before you start.
Thank you, Ruben. Yeah. Ruben's been so good. He sent me like this really good advice, like really well written and beautiful, like really long. So I'm really appreciative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that story where you just now got to burn all that advice. So it's just...
And then he ended on, and now let all of that go. That was very good.
Get the gasoline on.
Thanks for making us feel so welcome today as well. We appreciate it.
Well, we miss your in-house presence, but we're glad to have your presence online at least.
Yeah.
We miss you guys
Thank
as well.
you.
But it's a good session.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's, as I said, it's a really important part of what we have to understand and dive into. And I think we could probably do with a few lectures on it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But at least, you know, we're getting a little overview through this, and you guys, by doing your homework now, you know, this is a little bit more in-depth homework, I understand, but I think it's a useful practice for you guys to get a better understanding of all of this.
Speaking of that, Miggy, how long do you want the presentations
20 to
roughly?
30
It's 20 to 30 minutes. Okay.
Something between 20 and 30 minutes would be great, if you can. And you'd be surprised, you know. You can do that. So obviously you can get a lot of the information by reading the actual sutras related to your yama or niyama or whatever. But then you could also, for example, that book, The Heart of Yoga, that book that I think that I sent you guys on PDF, I think, did I? Not sure. But that's a great one that has Desikachar's Heart of Yoga that has a lot of stuff. And you know, you could just Google plenty of articles and other YouTube videos, and even go on Summer Healing's website, because Amy's also done lectures on each individual yama niyama, and she's on the Summer Healing YouTube, I'm pretty sure. So I think, you know, she's got a 20-minute to half an hour her spiel on each of the yamas and niyamas.
Was that on YouTube? Did you say?
Yeah. So, you know, there's plenty out there to look into. Good ones.